Hey everyone, welcome to the channel. Before we get started, don't forget to like and subscribe. Also, drop a comment letting us know where you're watching from and what time it is there. That way, YouTube will keep showing you more stories like this. Now, let's begin.
I once thought a mother's greatest pain was losing a child. But for me, that pain was the beginning of the most terrifying and haunting period of my life. I'm Beth. I live in a small town outside Columbus, Ohio, with my husband Mike and our 17-year-old son, Kevin. Our lives were peaceful until that July night. Around 2 a.m., a terrifying explosion shook the entire house. The pungent smell of smoke filled the bedroom from under the door. I quickly pushed Mike awake. "The house is on fire," I screamed. Mike leapt out of bed, opening the bedroom door. Flames were already high, the wooden staircase ablaze. Thick black smoke billowed, making it hard to breathe. We crawled on the floor, trying to escape through the window. "Kevin! Where's Kevin?" my husband shouted. Kevin's bedroom was at the end of the hallway. I saw Mike rush towards it despite the spreading flames. I wanted to follow, but the smoke was too thick. I couldn't breathe anymore. I had to climb out the window, falling into the bushes below. I stood on the lawn in front of the house, watching the flames devour our home. The wail of fire trucks echoed in the distance. Mike was brought out by rescuers from the second-story window, his hands and face covered in burn marks. But he was alone. Our son was nowhere to be seen. "Kevin! Where's Kevin?" I screamed. Mike shook his head, blood dripping from a wound on his forehead. I couldn't find him. The world seemed to collapse around me. I couldn't accept the reality at that moment. Kevin was still in there, in that fire, waiting for me to save him. I had to go in there. I had to find my son. "Kevin!" I screamed and lunged towards the burning house. Mike and a firefighter had to hold me back. "Let me go. My son is in there." I struggled and wailed his name. Mike and I embraced, crying loudly. A few hours later, when daylight broke and the fire had completely subsided, only a pile of charred ashes remained. The rescue team searched through the ashes, but found no sign of Kevin's body. I huddled in the back seat of the ambulance, my mind in a strange, blank state. We searched very thoroughly, but the fire was too large, coupled with the high temperature, especially in Kevin's bedroom area. At such temperatures, even bones can be incinerated into ash. The words from a rescue worker made me completely break down. I stared at him. "What do you mean?" "I'm very sorry, Mrs. Coleman. We believe Kevin perished in the fire. Mrs. Coleman, I know this is very hard to accept." "No, no, no, no. My son is not dead. You have to keep looking," I screamed. Mike hugged me, but this pain was inconsolable. The first few weeks were terrible. Mike was hospitalized for his burns. I stayed with my sister, but every day I drove back to the house. I couldn't accept that Kevin was dead. I dug through the ashes, searching for any remnant of my son. I lost 10 pounds in just 3 weeks and had to constantly take sleeping pills and tranquilizers. After a month, when I could finally accept the truth, we started clearing the debris to rebuild the house. I continued searching. In the rubble of Kevin's room, I found his half-burnt desk. The bottom drawer was still partially intact. Inside, I found a notebook that had been slightly burned, but the remaining pages were still legible. My heart pounded as I realized it was Kevin's diary. I clutched the notebook to my chest, the pain making me burst into tears. After a moment, I took a deep breath and opened the diary. February 15th. Today I attended my first meeting. I understand that only we truly grasp the truth and can cleanse the world. I reread that sentence 3 times. My hands trembled as I turned to another page. February 28th. Jake taught me how to make a bomb. He said we had to act soon. The church is the first target. We will cleanse the world of hypocrites. I couldn't breathe. That's where we used to take Kevin for Mass every Sunday. He used to sing in the choir. I continued reading. March 10th. The bomb is ready. I hid it in my bedroom. Tomorrow we will place it at the church. I threw the notebook to the ground and crawled away. I understood what had happened. Could it be? The bomb Kevin made had unexpectedly exploded in his bedroom. He died instantly, and his body was... The explosion caused the fire that consumed the entire house. I wailed from the deepest part of my pain. My son was a terrorist, a member of some extremist cult. I had failed as a mother. I didn't know what my own child was thinking. "What did you find, Beth?" Mike's question startled me. I quickly hid the diary in my bag. Just a few of Kevin's belongings left. I'm picking them up. That night, I burned the diary. I couldn't tell Mike everything. He had suffered enough. We still had to continue our lives in this small town. I would bury and end everything here. Watching the pages burn to ash, carrying Kevin's horrific secret. But I knew this wasn't the end. I had a responsibility to do something to atone for my son. I started volunteering at a youth counseling center. I wanted to help lost children who could easily be drawn into cults like Kevin. Every night I still dream of Kevin, then wake up haunted by how I failed as a mother. Perhaps that's the punishment I have to endure, not just to lose my child, but to live with the truth that my child could have become a murderer. And perhaps that's also the only way for me to find meaning in life again. I will try my best so that no other child will go down the path Kevin took. There are stories you want to forget, but they haunt you even more. I've tried to bury the memory of that brown-haired girl for the past 13 years, but I can't. I'm always regretful and tormented because she died due to my cowardice. It happened when I was 12 years old. Lily was my classmate. She always wore old clothes and had a sad demeanor. I learned from other classmates that Lily lived with her mom in a very small house on the outskirts of town. Life was quite difficult because her mom was blind. The beginning of the horrific story was a day I was late for school. As I turned onto the road leading to the school, I saw Mr. Anderson's familiar car parked on the side of the road, its engine still running. Almost every student at my school knew his license plate by heart. It wouldn't have been surprising if I hadn't seen Lily get out of the car. She stumbled, clutching her stomach, then bent over and vomited right by the roadside. "I don't want to repeat this again. Remember that?" Mr. Anderson's voice came from inside the car. Lily didn't answer, just kept her head down and continuously wiped her mouth. I hid behind a large tree, observing everything. Mr. Anderson drove away, leaving Lily standing alone. I didn't understand what was happening. Maybe Lily was sick, and Mr. Anderson was kind enough to take her to the hospital. But he left her here, and Mr. Anderson's voice sounded threatening. Mr. Anderson was a respected figure in the entire town. He had taught and was the coach of the state championship basketball team. Every summer, he organized free summer camps for underprivileged children. That evening, I told my mom what I had seen. My mom was washing dishes, then suddenly stopped. Mom asked me to repeat the story, asking if I was sure I saw Lily get out of Mr. Anderson's car. I nodded, confirming it. Mom quickly grabbed her phone. I sat listening to her talk to someone on the other end of the line. Mom recounted my story. I think something isn't right. Lily is only 12 years old. I was confused, not understanding anything. But when I asked again, Mom just remained silent and looked at me with a rather serious gaze. 2 days later, a police officer came to my house. He explained he had spoken to Mr. Anderson, and he said Lily had a cold, and he kindly drove her home early. There was nothing unusual. When my mom asked about Lily vomiting, the police officer replied that it was just due to the flu. He tapped his finger on the table, emphasizing that Mr. Anderson was a very reputable person in the community. Without concrete evidence, they couldn't do anything more. I saw the worried look on my mom's face, but she didn't say anything more. The next day at school, I went to Lily during lunchtime. She sat alone, looking tired. But when I approached to ask how she was, Lily immediately showed a bewildered attitude, as if she wasn't used to communicating. When I mentioned seeing her with Mr. Anderson the day before, Lily immediately cut me off, and there was even panic in her eyes. Sorry, I have to go." Lily left and I watched her go, and happened to see Mr. Anderson standing by the cafeteria doorway, looking directly at me with a cold gaze. After school, Mr. Anderson called me over. He commented that I was a good student, but sometimes excessive curiosity could cause trouble for others. Lily was going through a difficult time with her family situation, and he didn't want to see me bothering her anymore. Mr. Anderson placed his hand on my shoulder and squeezed gently. He warned that if he saw me continue to bother Lily, my grades would be affected, and he might have to call my parents. I kept my head down, replying obediently. From then on, I no longer talked to Lily. Every time I saw her, I would turn my face away because I remembered Mr. Anderson's gaze and voice that day. Sometime later, Lily started missing school frequently. When she was at school, she looked thin and tired. I noticed she often ran outside during class to vomit. Then Lily disappeared. That day, Mr. Anderson announced she was gravely ill. But for the next few days, Lily still didn't come to school. Then one day, the news of Lily's disappearance exploded throughout the town. The police searched for 3 days, and they found Lily at the edge of the forest, about 10 miles from town. Her body lay at the bottom of a cliff, with broken ribs and severe head trauma. Lily's sudden death shocked the entire town. Another horrifying piece of news was that they discovered Lily was 8 weeks pregnant during the autopsy. The police concluded that Lily fell from the cliff, possibly due to an accident. As for the baby she was carrying, they said they would not investigate to ensure Lily's privacy. Mr. Anderson was present at Lily's funeral. He stood in the front row, his face sad, his eyes red. From then on, no one mentioned Lily anymore, and rightly so, because she didn't have a single friend. Mr. Anderson continued teaching for another 5 years, then moved away as soon as he retired. Everyone still remembered him as a dedicated teacher. Now, 13 years after Lily's death, I am old enough to fully understand what happened. I understand why she vomited and was afraid, and I live with torment every day. If I had been braver then, if I had continued to care about Lily instead of turning my back, perhaps Lily would still be alive. But I did nothing. I just stayed silent and let Lily die in loneliness. Every time I visit my hometown, I go to Lily's grave and apologize to her. It all started when my father got a job as an assistant principal at a private high school in the town of Pawtucket, Rhode Island. Along with the job came a free house, just 3 blocks from the school. My family quickly moved to our new place. I was 15 at the time, incredibly excited for a new life. The house my dad was given was much grander than we had imagined. My mom kept raving about the spacious kitchen and the living room with its brick fireplace, but everything began from the very first day. I felt like something was off with how people in the neighborhood behaved. They still cheerfully greeted us, but their eyes avoided direct contact. My first week at the new school, I tried to fit in. All my classmates welcomed me when the teacher introduced me, but during breaks, they kept their distance. Until I met Grace. "You're the new assistant principal's son, aren't you?" "I'm Grace. Welcome to Rhode Island," Grace asked, her voice gentle. Everything became easier with Grace by my side. She showed me everything about this small town, helping me get used to the new environment faster. Grace asked me how it felt to move to a new city. She listened very carefully when I spoke. "Can I come over to your house?" Grace's naturalness and initiative surprised me, but I was also very happy. I immediately agreed. Grace came to my house one afternoon. I saw her through my bedroom window. I was about to call out loudly, but then I felt a little curious about Grace's demeanor. She stood in front of the door for quite a while, observing the entire house before ringing the doorbell. When I opened the door, Grace didn't step inside right away. Instead, she looked at the space within with a distant expression. "Which room are you in?" Grace asked as we walked in. "The corner room on the second floor," I replied. Grace nodded. "So, you're in the same spot as he was?" I looked at her blankly, not understanding what Grace meant. She smiled slightly, then walked straight upstairs. I followed, feeling a bit confused. Even more surprising, Grace seemed to know the house very well. She pointed to the corner of my room and said, "Lisa's bed was here, and her desk was next to the window. Before there used to be a small bathroom next to Lisa's room too." "Grace, what are you talking about? Who's Lisa?" "She was my best friend. Lisa's family used to live here, but not in this house." Grace looked around the room with sad eyes. "Where is Lisa now?" I asked. "She died." The answer shocked me quite a bit. Grace said it again, her tone very calm. "A big fire happened. She and her 2 younger brothers didn't make it." A chill ran down my spine. 2 years ago. This house was owned by the previous assistant principal, the one your dad is replacing. After the fire, there were many rumors that the spirits of the former residents still haunted the house. People in town often avoided this place. Children weren't allowed to go near it. Now I understood why everyone had been acting so strangely towards my family. We were living in a house built on the foundation of a tragedy. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about Lisa and her 2 younger brothers. They had died right in this room. I felt the air was colder than usual. "But that's only half of the truth," Grace said, looking at me for a long time, then said something that chilled me to the bone. Those words echoed in my head for days afterward. I begged Grace to tell me the whole truth. Grace hesitated for quite a while before she began. "Mr. Harrison was the assistant principal before your father. He had 3 children, Lisa, who was my age and yours, Mark, 10, and Danny, 8. Their family lived in that house for over 10 years. There was a student named Ryan Brooks. He was a troubled kid from a family with many problems. Mr. Harrison often kept Ryan after school, supposedly for tutoring. But what happened wasn't normal tutoring. Mr. Harrison had been abusing Ryan for months. Lisa, Mr. Harrison's eldest daughter, knew about this but didn't dare to speak up. Ryan cried for help. He told his homeroom teacher, even wrote letters to the school board, but no one believed him. Mr. Harrison was a respected, reputable man in town, and Ryan was just a troubled child from a broken home. One afternoon, Ryan couldn't take it anymore. He took his father's pistol and went to Mr. Harrison's house. In his private office, Ryan shot and killed Mr. Harrison. Ryan then set the house on fire to erase all traces, and all 5 members of Mr. Harrison's family perished. Ryan left a long confession letter detailing the abuse and why he had to do it, but it was kept secret to protect the school's reputation. Grace and I went to see my father to tell him everything. Dad listened and was lost in thought for many days afterward. He didn't ask again, nor did he express any doubt. About a month later, Dad announced our family would be leaving. Dad had other plans and wouldn't be working in education anymore. He placed a hand on my shoulder and smiled gently. I didn't ask anything further. Not because I understood, but because at that time, I chose to follow my dad. I chose to leave instead of facing any other horrible truth. Later, I understood. Dad stayed silent because he struggled with a choice, a comfortable life or a peaceful one. If our family had stayed there, the whispers and rumors would have continued. We couldn't live normally after knowing all the truth. My family moved away. Grace's family did too. Everything would truly end. The tragedy had taken too many lives. They needed to rest in peace. But I still keep the photo Grace gave me. Every time I see it, I think of Grace, my friend who endured that sorrow alone. I decided to tell this story because I understand that sometimes the truth needs to be told, even if it's too late. It can't change anything, just for the person carrying it to feel lighter. Some stories stick with you, even years later. They haunt me late at night. The story of the Miller family is one of them. It's not because of how violent their deaths were, but because of what I found out afterward. That year, I was 23 and lived with my family in the quiet little town of Franklin, Tennessee. The Millers lived 2 houses down from us. David Miller was a mechanic, and his wife taught elementary school. They had an 11-year-old daughter named Lily. Lily was a unique kid. Her skin was pale, almost anemic looking, and her eyes were cold. She didn't have that carefree innocence you'd expect for her age. While other kids played outside, Lily would just stand by the fence, staring. I tried talking to Lily many times, but all I got back was an empty stare. That August, the distant wail of police sirens broke the peaceful afternoon. I was coming home from work when I saw police cars and ambulances crammed in front of the Miller's house. Neighbors were gathered, whispering. They said they'd heard loud bangs earlier, possibly gunshots. I was so confused and worried that I hung around to see what was happening. The police taped off the area, and about an hour later, 2 black body bags were carried out of the house. News quickly spread through the neighborhood. David had shot his wife, and then himself. Lily survived by hiding in the bathroom and calling 911. The whole town was in shock over the tragic event. Everyone felt terrible for the Millers, especially Lily. How could a child possibly get over losing both parents in one night? "Poor kid," a neighbor said, wiping away tears. I kept thinking about Lily being led out of the house. She wasn't crying, her eyes fixed straight ahead. At the time, I figured the shock was so immense that it had shut down all her emotions. The police concluded that David had suffered a mental breakdown due to work stress, leading to the horrific incident. At the funeral, I couldn't take my eyes off Lily. She sat upright in the front row, wearing a black dress. A lot of people from town came to the funeral. Everyone was crying, feeling deeply for Lily's situation. They came to offer her words of encouragement and hugs. But Lily just sat there silently in the front row, her eyes never leaving the 2 caskets. A few days after the funeral, her aunt from Memphis picked her up to raise her. Life in town slowly went back to normal. A few weeks later, a friend who worked at the police department invited me out for a beer. We talked about a lot of things, and eventually, the conversation drifted to the Miller case. There was something off about it. The bathroom door wasn't locked. Lily was just standing there, like she was waiting for us to arrive. There was no sign that she'd been through anything traumatic. "What do you think?" Ben shook his head, taking a long swig of his beer. "I've been in this job for 10 years. Kids who witness violence usually react in one of 2 ways. Either they're so shocked they can't say anything, or they scream hysterically. Lily was different, too calm. I didn't say anything for a moment. Then he spoke again. It's for the peace of mind of those left behind. They have to move on with their lives." The Miller story gradually faded into just another local tale, with people in town occasionally bringing it up, mostly curious about how Lily was doing now. 3 years later, a couple moved in and bought the Miller house. They started renovating the entire place. They left a bunch of stuff out in the yard and by the front gate for anyone who wanted to take it for free. I was walking by and saw a pale pink notebook in a box of old things. Curious, I picked it up. The first page said, "Lily's Diary." My heart suddenly started pounding faster. I don't know when that name began to stir such mixed feelings in me. I turned to the next page, which had crude but chilling drawings. A man, a tiny child. My brain automatically processed the information in a way I didn't want it to. Below the drawings were lines of pencil writing, some pressed so hard they tore the paper. Dad hurt me again. Mom knew but didn't say anything. At this point, my hands started to tremble. I kept turning the pages. "I can't run away." I screamed, but no one heard me. Mom said I had to be good, but why be good to bad things? Each page opened up a piece of hell. A sentence was repeated on many pages, each time written more clearly. No one came to help me, so I helped myself. When I turned to the last few pages, the true meaning finally emerged. The drawings changed. No longer a victim, Lily began to draw herself as someone with power. She drew her dad lying next to a gun. Lily wrote, "I'm almost ready. They won't hurt me anymore. It will be like in the movies." I stood frozen, the notebook dropping to the ground. So Lily wasn't just a surviving victim. She was both a victim and the one who did it. Lily had quietly endured abuse. When she realized no one was coming to save her, she decided to save herself, in the only way an 11-year-old child could think of. Honestly, my emotions were incredibly mixed at that moment. I burned it that night and never told anyone about it. I decided I'd be the only one who knew the truth. Lily was living a different life now, and I was sure it was a much better one. The town was still peaceful, and the new couple who moved in, they were getting ready for a new life too. The best thing was to just let everything go. Life sometimes isn't what we imagine. Whether they are victims or perpetrators, everyone carries their own pain and untold stories. We can never truly know everything someone endures, and sometimes silence is the only way to protect yourself. I used to believe the small town where I was born was the safest place on earth. But then, one autumn night last year, a terrifying secret was uncovered that shook the entire town. What haunts me the most is who was behind it. I work as an accountant for a small oil and gas company in Marfa, Texas. It's a small town near the Mexican border. Everyone knows everyone. One of my mechanic friends is Roy. His garage is right in the center of town. I always thought Roy was a kind and gentle man. Not just me, but the whole town loved Roy. Until last autumn, when an incident changed the way I saw everyone around me. I had just finished my shift and was on my way home. I stopped to get gas. Across the street, I saw a chaotic scene. The area was cordoned off. There were many police cars and sirens wailed loudly. Then, I saw a woman wrapped in a blanket. A police officer was leading her away. The woman looked like she had just returned from hell. Her pants were torn, her hair was disheveled, and her face was gaunt. I froze, realizing that the place she had just come from was Roy's auto shop. In the very next second, seeing Roy handcuffed in the back of a police car, head bowed, shocked me. That evening, the whole town was buzzing about what happened with Roy, and I was no exception. The town's resident chat group exploded. Messages kept popping up. Everyone was talking excitedly. From the snippets of information in the messages, I learned that the woman's name was Hannah, a cashier at the local supermarket. She had only moved to town a short while ago and had been missing for 2 weeks. Everyone thought she had gone to visit family in Dallas. But what had really happened, we didn't know. It was all just speculation. 2 days later, the local newspaper published an article with a headline that sent shivers down my spine. Local mechanic accused of abduction and torture. It was just as everyone had suspected. The girl was Hannah. She had been held captive by Roy in a secret room behind his garage for 2 weeks. Hannah recounted that Roy had lured her into the garage, claiming her car had an urgent problem that needed to be checked. What Hannah described stunned me. The room where Hannah was held was completely soundproofed, with surveillance cameras in every corner. On a shelf were videotapes labeled with different dates and the names of dozens of women. Among them was Jessica, a young and beautiful girl who was well known in town. Jessica had disappeared 3 years ago. Everyone thought Jessica had left town to pursue her acting dream in Austin. But now we knew the truth. The police also found a notebook belonging to Roy that detailed everyone's habits. He knew their exact work hours when they came home, when they went shopping. Roy even recorded private conversations he had overheard. But that was only half of the horror, because those were the victims Roy had successfully executed his plan on. In the days after Roy's arrest, many other women came forward, stating they had been followed or approached by Roy. But as a beloved and trusted figure in the community, it was hard for people to unmask him. I started to recall the signs I had overlooked. Roy always asked too many questions about everyone's private lives. He could recount detailed schedules for anyone in town. At the time, I thought Roy was just a neighbor who cared, but now I understand it was a sign of systematic stalking. I suddenly remembered a detail from about a month ago. I was coming home late after a date with Sam and saw the silhouette of a man standing near her house. When I looked closer, the person had vanished. Now I'm sure it was Roy. It's terrifying that Roy had lived among us for years, receiving absolute respect and trust. The trial took place 6 months later, with many town residents and Roy's would-be victims present. He sat silently throughout the proceedings, showing no emotion. When his lawyer asked why he did those things, Roy simply said, "I wanted to understand them." He offered no complex defenses or explanations. Roy's statement silenced the entire courtroom. He didn't see women as human beings, but merely as subjects to study and control. Hannah left town right after the trial. Roy was sentenced to 25 years. His garage was demolished a month later. Now, it's just a gravel lot with weeds growing on it. The town of Marfa is not the same anymore. People have become more vigilant. Casual conversations on the streets have become less frequent. Sometimes the most dangerous person isn't a stranger in the dark, but the neighbor with a friendly smile. I learned that intuition never lies. If something makes you feel uncomfortable about a person, no matter how small, listen to it. Because sometimes the smallest details are signs of something far more dangerous. There are some sounds you never forget once you hear them. For me, the humming of the Cyber Chase theme song outside my window in the middle of the night is one of them. 15 years have passed, but every time I hear that tune, I still shiver as I remember that night. It was the summer I turned 8. My parents were busy with their work schedules, so they decided to send me to my grandparents' house in Burnett, Texas. I was going to stay there for 3 weeks. My grandparents lived in a small wooden house, surrounded by a forest. Living with them was their helper, Aunt May, who assisted with chores around the house. The first few nights at my grandparents' house, I couldn't sleep. Everything was unfamiliar, from the smell of wood to the sound of cicadas buzzing outside. A few nights later, a new sound joined the others, a faint rattling outside my window. I pulled my blanket up, leaving only my eyes exposed, telling myself it was just the wind blowing against the window. After a while, it disappeared, and I drifted off to sleep. I still thought it was a normal sound around here, so I didn't mention it to my grandparents. The next morning, my grandpa took me and our dog for a walk. We walked along the trail that led into the woods behind the house. Our dog suddenly stopped, her fur bristling on her back, and started to growl towards a bush. "What is it, Cora?" Grandpa asked. I looked in the same direction and saw a figure standing still behind a large pine tree. I blinked a few times, thinking I was imagining things, but the figure remained there, just standing still and watching. "Grandpa, there's someone over there." But when we looked again, the figure had vanished. The dog continued to growl. "Could be a lost hunter," Grandpa said, and that made sense to me. That night, after watching Cyber Chase, I went to my room early. After talking to my parents on the phone, I got into bed to play my game console. In the middle of the night, I was woken up by a strange sound. Someone was humming the Cyber Chase theme song outside my window. I pulled the covers over my head, scared, and just lay still. When the song ended, I slowly pulled the blanket down. "Grandpa," I called out to him. "Hey, it's me. Come out here, grandson. I want to show you something cool." Maybe he couldn't sleep and wanted to show me the stars or some wild rabbits coming out to feed at night, things he often told me about. I climbed out of bed, opened the window, and looked outside. A figure stood in the dark, reaching out a hand. "Let's go, kid." I took that hand and followed. We walked a few steps on the dirt road, heading toward the forest. I felt a bit strange because Grandpa wasn't saying anything, nor did he turn to look at me as usual. The moonlight grew brighter, and I looked down at the hand holding mine. This wasn't Grandpa's hand. His hand was more wrinkled. I also smelled a strong scent of tobacco, even though my grandpa didn't smoke. I saw something black sticking out from the back of his waistband. It looked like a gun. I slowed down, terrified. Immediately, I felt a tight grip and was pulled forward. Just then, Grandpa's familiar voice rang out from the direction of the house. "Ethan! Ethan, where are you?" I immediately stopped dead. The man flinched, turning his head towards the house. In that moment of distraction, I quickly yanked my hand free and ran back towards the house. "Grandpa! Grandpa!" I screamed as I ran. Grandpa was standing on the porch, all the outdoor lights shining brightly. I rushed to him and hugged him tight. "Where have you been?" "What's wrong?" There was a man. I thought it was you, but it wasn't," I said. Grandpa held me close, then looked out towards the woods. Everything was just darkness now. Grandma and Aunt May also woke up because of the noise. Grandpa called the police immediately. They arrived and started searching the surrounding area. It didn't take long for them to find a man hiding in a drainage ditch over 300 feet from our house. The police also found a gun tucked into his pants. The man's name was Rick. He was Aunt May's ex-boyfriend. They had broken up a few weeks before I came to stay with my grandparents. Rick had followed Aunt May here and planned to kidnap me to force her to get back together with him. I didn't mean to hurt the boy. I just wanted May to understand that she needed me, Rick told the police. But the axe he had prepared told a different story. My parents drove all night to come pick me up. Although Aunt May had done nothing wrong, my grandparents felt they had to let her go. From then on, my parents rearranged their work schedules to spend more time with me. I still visit my grandparents every summer and during long breaks. I'm grateful that Grandpa woke up to use the bathroom that night and found me not in my room. If it hadn't been for his call, I can't imagine what would have happened in the woods that night with a man carrying an axe, determined to get what he wanted.
I can never sleep in a completely silent room, because in absolute silence, I'll hear that sound again. I'm Amy, and that year I was 12 years old. My parents sent me to the town of Phoenicia in New York to spend the summer with my maternal grandparents. Their wooden house was located far from the main road, surrounded by cornfields and pine forests. My grandparents' closest neighbor was Mr. Bill, about 60 years old, who lived alone. Mr. Bill was as strong as a bison. Every day he did all sorts of different jobs around his ranch. On the third day after I arrived, Grandma rushed home, her face ashen. "Bill is dead." I was stunned. Just yesterday, Mr. Bill had waved from across the fence as I walked by. The doctor came to perform an autopsy that same afternoon. After an hour of examination, they concluded it was a natural death due to sudden cardiac arrest. The strange thing was, no one had ever seen Mr. Bill show any signs of illness, not even a cough or a cold. He was always healthy and full of life. Following the farming community tradition, families would bury their loved ones on the same day in the plot behind their house. The funeral was attended by many town residents. Even though I had only just met him, I was very fond of Mr. Bill. So I went with Grandma to attend the funeral. I stood next to Grandma, watching them lower the coffin into the deep hole, feeling both sad and a little shiver. That night, I couldn't sleep well, probably because Mr. Bill's sudden death was still haunting my mind. In the middle of the night, I woke up because I had to use the bathroom. My grandparents' bathroom wasn't inside the house. It was a separate outhouse located in the plot behind the house. The path to it was a small dirt road. I hesitated for a few minutes, then decided to grab a flashlight and step outside. The August night air was chilly, and crickets chirped from everywhere. The faint moonlight filtered through the trees, casting strange shadows on the ground. As I walked past the fence that separated the two properties, I saw Mr. Bill's fresh grave. I continued towards the outhouse, my hand gripping the flashlight tightly. Just as I stepped inside the outhouse and sat down, I heard a sound. It was a thumping. I held my breath, listening. The thumping continued, steadily. Then another sound, a weak scream. I jumped up, my pants not even properly pulled up, and ran at full speed back to the house. I cried as I ran. When I got home, I rushed straight into Grandma's room and shook her shoulder hard. Grandma, they're screaming near the outhouse. Grandma sat up, her eyes still hazy from sleep. Amy, what's wrong with you? Did you have a nightmare? I was still crying and gasping for breath. Grandma took me back to my room and tried to comfort me. The strange sounds you heard are perfectly normal for a sparse, wooded town like this. You're just imagining things. Sleep tight. Maybe Grandma was right. Maybe I was overthinking things. I lay down, but I couldn't sleep. Near dawn, I had to use the bathroom again, but didn't dare go alone. I woke up Tom and Lisa, my two cousins who were sleeping in the next room, and asked them to come with me. All three of us went outside with flashlights. On the way to the outhouse, Tom and Lisa whispered about how I might be stressed because of Mr. Bill's death. But when we got closer to the outhouse, everyone fell silent because we heard that sound. This time, it was desperate pleas from underground. Without another word, all three of us ran back to the house as if chased by ghosts. This time, when we woke up Grandma and Grandpa, the two adults saw the fear on Tom and Lisa's faces and knew this wasn't just my imagination anymore. No one could go back to sleep. The three of us took turns recounting in detail what we had heard, especially me, having witnessed it twice. That sound, I think it was Mr. Bill. My words left the whole family stunned. No one could sleep anymore. Grandpa quickly put on his clothes and ran to Mr. Bill's son's house to meet him. Their conversation lasted a very long time. It took hours of persuasion before Grandpa finally got permission from Mr. Bill's son. They then called a few other men from the farming community to help dig up Mr. Bill's grave. An hour passed, and they all worked together to clear the last layer of soil and open the coffin lid with trembling hands. Mr. Bill's body was now face down. When Mr. Bill's son turned his father over, all the men present were practically frozen. Mr. Bill's eyes were wide open, his mouth agape as if he had been desperately trying to scream. His entire body was covered in scratches and dried blood. There were also claw marks on the coffin lid, evidence of the terrifying last hours of his life. Mr. Bill had been buried alive. His son knelt beside the body, sobbing. My grandpa and the other men stood around, unable to believe the horrific scene they had just witnessed. The doctor who had performed Mr. Bill's autopsy earlier was called in. After re-examining him, he concluded that Bill had overexerted himself, leading to sudden cardiac arrest. It was a rare case that caused him to be mistakenly thought dead, when in reality, he had only fallen into a deep coma. Bill ultimately passed away from suffocation or a heart attack while in the coffin. Many years have passed, but I still cannot forget the desperate thumping that echoed from underground, the cries for help from a man buried alive. I thought I'd gotten a great deal on a house, until I discovered the horrifying secret hidden inside. I'm Maya, a freelance designer. In March of last year, I decided to leave Los Angeles. City life had exhausted me. The endless traffic, skyrocketing rent, and the feeling of loneliness in a city of millions. I wanted to find a quiet place, a small town in Northern California, to start a new life. I finally chose a small town called Grass Valley, nestled among the pine forests of the Sierra Nevada. On Craigslist, I found a house for an unbelievably low price. I called the seller immediately. "Hi, I'm Will," a tired voice answered. I asked about the house, and he explained that it was old in a secluded area, and he wanted to sell it quickly. Will emphasized that he only accepted cash because he didn't trust banks or real estate agents. I scheduled a time to see the house before making a decision. A few days later, I drove 3 hours from Los Angeles to Grass Valley to see the house. Will was a middle-aged man with an unapproachable demeanor. The house was old but sturdy, surrounded by many trees and about 5 miles from town. When I asked him why he was selling it so cheaply, Will was silent for a moment, then said, "My wife Ella disappeared 2 months ago. I'm desperate to find her. Everything in this house reminds me of Ella, and I just can't stay here anymore." I was quiet after hearing Will's story, feeling sympathy for him instead of the unapproachable feeling I had at first. As Will showed me around the house, I heard a faint scratching sound from inside a wall somewhere. "What's that?" Will shrugged. "Squirrels and mice. They've been a problem for years. It's because of all the trees around here." Will generously offered to include all the tools and building materials if I agreed to buy the house, since he didn't need them anymore. I signed the contract that same day and gave Will the full amount in cash. Before he left, he stood there for a long time, looking around as if he was very attached to the place. 3 days later, I moved in with my best friend, Levi, to help me fix up the house. Levi is a contractor, so I completely trusted him to make all the decisions. On the first day, we planned to repaint the living room. As we took down all the items hanging on the walls, I noticed a picture of a woman with long hair. This must have been Ella, the wife Will mentioned. I carefully put the picture in a corner. When we started painting the walls, the scratching sound returned. This time, it was louder and more frantic. "That animal sounds pretty big and strong," Levi said. "We should probably call a service to handle it." We turned on some music to drown out the noise and continued our work. By the third day, as we were cleaning out the basement, I heard a faint sound, like someone crying. "Did you hear that?" I asked Levi. He stopped what he was doing and listened. "It's probably just the wind." But the next day, the crying returned, along with some screaming. At this point, we started to feel uneasy, but I had put all my money into this house. I had no choice but to continue with my plan. The next day, while doing some repairs in the basement, we discovered a wall that looked strange. The bricks and mortar were newer than the rest. "This wall was built recently," Levi said, touching the surface. "There might be another room behind it." After some discussion, we decided to break down the wall. After nearly an hour, we had created a large enough opening for us to go inside. Levi went first, shining his flashlight. Immediately, we were hit by an overwhelming stench. The flashlight beam swept around the room. We realized it was a small, windowless room with a low ceiling. Then I noticed the long brown hair of a woman. She was lying face down on the concrete floor, her body curled up. I screamed, clutching onto Levi, my heart pounding. He was also panicked and quickly shined the flashlight into another corner. But by doing so, we accidentally discovered the next horror. In the opposite corner, another woman was sitting, leaning against the wall, her head bowed. This time, Levi screamed even louder than I did. Suddenly, the woman slowly looked up. Her lips moved as if she was trying to say something. I started to walk towards the woman, despite Levi's attempts to stop me. My emotions were incredibly mixed at that moment. There was shock, disbelief, and a little anger. This was the house I had put all my money and effort into buying. I couldn't accept that it held such a horrifying secret. When I got closer, the woman looked at me with a look of great hope. On the wall near her, there were countless claw marks with dried blood on them. I realized this was the source of the scratching we had been hearing for the past few days. It was only then that I truly understood the horror of the situation. This woman had been locked in here for months, living in absolute darkness, with no food, only drops of water leaking from a pipe. She had been living next to a dead body. I pulled out my phone with a trembling hand and called 911. The police and an ambulance arrived within 10 minutes. They took the surviving woman to the hospital immediately and secured the scene. I sank into a chair and buried my face in my hands, crying. I knew I had been scammed, and all my plans and dreams were shattered. Levi sat down and comforted me for a long time. That day, the police arranged for us to stay somewhere else. 2 days later, the investigating officer called me. The woman who survived is Ella Thompson, the wife of Will Thompson, the man who sold me the house. The woman who died is Anna Kim, 24 years old. Ella had told us the whole truth. Anna Kim had come to the house to demand that Will leave his wife and marry her, threatening to tell Ella everything. Will killed Anna in a fit of rage, and when Ella threatened to call the police, he locked both of them in the room and sealed the wall. I felt stunned and cried a lot again when I learned the whole truth. Will was arrested at a motel in Sacramento. He confessed to murder and unlawful imprisonment. Ella recovered after 3 weeks of treatment at the hospital. As for me, I put the house back up for sale after having everything in the basement completely cleaned out. I'm living in a small apartment now. I learned an expensive lesson. Nothing is cheap and good in this world, and certainly nothing is free. My name is Ethan. I live alone in a small town in the southern United States. My work takes up a lot of time in a day. I have to leave the house at 8 a.m. and return at 7 p.m. The area around my house was quite empty until the last few months. A family of a young couple and their daughter moved in. They weren't very friendly, so I only greeted them briefly in some first meetings. When I came home from work in the evening, I saw a little girl sitting on the side of the road, wearing thin clothes in the cold winter. After a few questions, I realized that the girl was the child of a young couple next door. The girl was about 5 years old, shivering, her eyes fixated on the ground. When she heard me ask, she just looked up, looked at me with innocent, puffy eyes, and did not answer. I was about to help her stand up, but suddenly her mother's scolding sound came from afar. She is Kate, about 35 years old, with a thin body and some bruises on her face. I greeted Kate in a friendly manner, but she ignored me. She roughly pulled her daughter into the house and scolded her repeatedly, causing her to cry in fear. That night while I was sleeping, the sound of the couple arguing and the loud cry of the neighbor's daughter woke me up. This wasn't the first night like that. Since they moved in, I was often bothered by loud arguments. I'm quite uncomfortable. It's been a long day of work, so I really want to rest. But it's a private matter of their family, so I'm not feeling comfortable about reminding them and instead choose to keep quiet. The frequency of the couple's arguments is increasing. They use harsh words and insult each other. Sometimes there is a mother's yelling at her daughter, followed by her loud crying. I feel sorry for her when she has to live in such an environment. A few days later, that house fell strangely quiet. They must have resolved their conflicts, I thought. Another evening, I came home later than usual. On the dirt road leading to the house, I saw Kate's daughter again. This time she dressed more warmly. The little girl no longer sat with her head down, holding a toy shovel and diligently digging down the dirt road. I approached and gently asked her what she was doing here. Her face was much brighter. Her innocent voice answered me. I dig graves to bury people. That innocent voice told me that it was following my mother's actions the previous evening. I looked towards the neighbor's house in fear. Kate's figure standing at the door startled me. Her eyes were sharp and a bit angry. Kate slowly approached, pulled her daughter's hand, and went into the house without saying a word. Early the next morning, I heard loud crying and a very strong banging on the door. Hurrying to open the door, I saw a little girl with messy hair and disheveled clothes crying loudly while pointing towards her house. A series of questions arose in my mind. Walking towards the house, I immediately felt a cold chill run down my spine. In the house's messy living room, Kate hanged herself, her body floating, her face pale. I felt like my body was frozen shut, so scared that I couldn't move. My mind went all blank, my ears were ringing. The girl's cry pulled me back to reality. Immediately, I smelled a terrible stench. Taking the girl back to my house, I quickly called the police. After investigation, the police concluded that Kate's death was due to her hanging herself. Even more horrifying, they discovered Kate's husband's body buried behind the garden. The body was determined to have been dead for about 5 days and was decomposing. Kate herself attacked and murdered her husband. Then she ended her own life. Kate's daughter fell asleep in my arms because she was tired. Looking at the poor girl, I felt sorry for her unhappy childhood and having to witness so many terrible things. The girl was taken to live with her aunt in rural California, 300 kilometers from her old home. I think her parents' married life is not happy. The bruises on Kate's body are most likely caused by her husband's violence. Kate only acted spontaneously when she murdered her husband due to the life of too much pain and repression she had endured in the past. I was going around checking all the doors and windows, made sure not even a fly could sneak in. Not just mine, but all the other houses too. The government has issued an order requiring everyone to remain indoors for at least the next 48 hours. The Nation Guard is being urgently deployed to control the monsters and stand by for rescue operations in high-risk areas. That was what the news on TV was saying. I hugged my 5-year-old daughter, feeling all confused and anxious, while she was excited about the news that she'd be off school tomorrow. Kids are so innocent and chill. I looked at her and thought out loud. Monsters with rapidly increasing reproduction rates have been reported. They possess a unique ability to transform and mimic anyone's voice, so the public is urged to remain vigilant and exercise extreme caution. God. What used to be just the wild imagination of talented screenwriters for classic movies is actually happening. I'd been taking care of my daughter on my own for almost 2 years, since my wife left me for another guy. I pictured the future where I'd got a bunch of plans and projects lined up for me and my daughter. I'd been busting my butt to make sure my daughter has a comfy life. But what was the point? Did I even have a shot at making those plans happen? Daddy! My daughter's shout totally caught me off guard. What's up, Nicole? I leaned in close and whispered, "Let's play a whispering game, sweetie." My daughter smiled big and nodded yes. Daddy, can you hear Mommy? Her next question totally froze me. What do you mean? I whispered, but my voice got a bit louder while I gently hugged my daughter's shoulders. Do you remember your mom's voice, Nicole? I'm not sure, I guess. My daughter smiled, and it was kinda sneaky for a 5-year-old. I'd never seen her smile like that before. It felt like she was hinting at something. Daddy! My daughter called out again and gave my cheek a little pat. Nicole. Daddy, you lost! Why are you talking so loud? She jumped up and down, teasing me like crazy. I couldn't help but laugh. This was really my 5-year-old angel. I must have been overthinking it all. I put my finger to my lips to tell my daughter to be quiet, and she did the same. We both just cracked up. Nicole said she wanted honey butter toast for dinner that night, and I had no reason to say no. I checked the clock and saw it was already past 6 p.m., so I told my daughter to be good while I wrapped up dinner. The sky's getting dark quick today, I thought to myself. As I sliced up some bread, the news speaker's voice blared out again. Our latest report indicates that the town of Marietta, Ohio, is facing an imminent threat from a group of dangerous creatures approaching the area. I couldn't believe it. Marietta is where I live. I cracked open the glass door and peeked outside, and it was all quiet. I gotta take care of my stomach and my daughter first. The government will figure out how to deal with those guests. Back in the kitchen, I got to work. Ramon. The weak call made me stop. Ramon, can you please open the door for me? It was my wife, Shanann. I went back to the living room where my daughter was chilling. She looked up at me and gave me a big smile. Dad, is that Mom's voice? I peeked through the peephole, and there was nobody out there. Ramon, please! Shanann's whisper was right behind me, so I quickly turned around. I caught my daughter's gaze, and she had this weird smile looking at me. I totally freaked out and ran around, yelling my daughter's name in a panic while she was just sitting on the couch, giggling at me. In a split second, thinking about that monster, I rushed over and squeezed with both hands, and Nicole's little body smacked hard into the kitchen counter. Not stopping there, I grabbed the knife and kept slashing it over and over. When I snapped back to reality, I jumped up, shocked with my hands all red. Ramon. Shanann's weak whisper came through again. I glanced at the entrance and then at the small, incomplete body on the floor. Attention, people of Marietta. Please do not go outside. The army and police are on their way. Screams of panic and pain were coming from the houses around me. My head was spinning and my ears were ringing. The monsters just showed up, and there was my daughter, the one I thought was my whole world, on the floor. Outside the door was my unfaithful wife, back to beg for my help.